Record now. Great. So as Alicia mentioned, if you are on Twitter and you hear anything that really inspires you, please tweet. We have Sam, who's a recent alumni, who's going to be monitoring our social media. So please share, tweet anything that you like the sound of, or anything that you hear that's inspiring. So just to give you a bit of background about the scholarship, many of you might be unfamiliar or never heard of the scholarship before, but it's actually been around since the 1940s. It was established after the Second World War by the Lord Mayor at the time and prominent business leaders who basically wanted to recognize all the hard work that Franklin Roosevelt did during the Second World War. So the idea of this living scholarship, living memorial came about, and it was actually later endorsed by Eleanor Roosevelt and General Eisenhower when he came to visit Nottingham after the Second World War. And since its inception, over 186 individuals from Nottinghamshire have been out to the USA to visit America. And I guess the scholarship has two core aims. First of all, it's about promoting the rich heritage and culture of the UK and particularly Nottinghamshire and America. And the way that's achieved is that we encourage all scholars to spend at least 50% of their time living with American families. And I think all the alumni will fondly remember hosts that they lived with and those experiences and those friendships you make on the scholarship. But it's also about visiting cultural sites. So from Statue of Liberty all the way to Alcatraz. It's really about embedding yourself in American culture. And before scholars go to America, we will offer a tour of Nottingham and the county so that the scholars are true ambassadors of Nottinghamshire and really can promote Nottingham as Nottinghamshire as a destination to visit. We've got so much history and so many amazing things in the county. The second core part of the scholarship, core aim, is around professional development. So scholars essentially create a research project that's linked to their job or their career or their sector. Sometimes their employer might have a say in what research is conducted. Other times it's led by the individual themselves. So these individuals, the scholars, will go, they'll plan their own itinerary, they'll plan their own journey, and they'll make contact with American businesses across America with the aim of building up long-term relationships, with learning new ideas or looking at innovation and bringing all that back to benefit the county. And I think we've had some examples where some of the new ideas and innovations that have been spotted in America have actually led to job creation in Nottinghamshire, which I think during this very difficult time for a lot of people is an amazing opportunity. And I think that's where the scholarship can really shine, is bringing back new innovations, new ideas from America, and really making Nottingham and the county a centre of innovation. I don't know any other city that has such an amazing link, particularly with the Roosevelt family. And I was really lucky enough to spend 3 days living with Haven Roosevelt, who's the grandson of President Roosevelt. I cannot describe the experience of walking to my bedroom and passing portraits of Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt on the wall. It's something that is going to stay with me forever. And they were such a welcoming family. And we now have the great granddaughter who's taken up the baton to host scholars as and when itineraries and schedules align, Sarah Screenmaker. So we're really grateful for the Roosevelt family for continuing their support of the scholarship and meeting scholars when they go out to America. So again, it's such a unique asset the scholarship is to the city and the county. And I look forward to hearing ideas on how we can continue to grow the scholarship and position it and get it ready and position it for the next 70 odd years. So thank you again for coming tonight, and I'm looking forward to the speakers. So I'd like to welcome the first speaker tonight. It's Russ Blenkinsop, is a 1983 scholar and the secretary of the scholarship. I think all the management team would agree that Russ is the glue that binds us. He keeps us on track, and he makes sure that we're constantly, developing ourselves, but also helping the scholarship grow further. So I'd like to welcome Russ, who's going to be speaking about some of the successes we've had over the recent years. Over to you, Russ.
Well, thanks, Sheridan. Appreciate the introductions. So 2020, despite the pandemic, has been a relatively successful year for us. The first major success this year was our first theme scholar, Tom Cable, who will be speaking later on tonight. Theme scholarships are really important for us because they help us build partnerships with organisations within Nottinghamshire, and they're also looking to provide another source of income for us going forward. So we think theme scholars will be part of our future going forward. We're also very thankful that our 2019 scholars have returned and engaged with the management group. The scholarship is run by the management group and overseen by the trustees. In particular, Sam has come back, Sam Preston, and she is looking after our social media now. And Henry Franklin is looking after our alumni. And there'll be more from Henry later on this evening. As ever, we're continually grateful for the support of the Lord Mayor and the Chair of the Notts County Council. Sadly, Rosemary can't be with us tonight, but Stuart is here with us representing the county. These dignitaries were founding members of the scholarship back in the late 40s, and they've been with us from that day to this, so we're grateful for their support. We've also had tremendous enthusiasm and energy from the new management team that's enabled us to plan events such as last year's Thanksgiving, and we want to do one again this year, and we've managed to do it virtually, so we're really pleased that we got that off the ground. We're also grateful to Richard Donovan, the Head of Global and International Relationships at Experian, for agreeing to help us formulate. We want to make sure we become even more relevant, work with the scholars, and emulate the Churchill Foundation. So overall, it's been a successful year. It's been challenging, but we're very optimistic for a re-energised scholarship in the future, coping with a rapidly changing environment. Just want to end by saying at last year's Thanksgiving, we reconnected with Paul Harvey. He runs Icarus Media, and he has helped us put together our first professional video, which is on our webpage now, and I'd like to show it to you. So I'll pass back to Sheridan to look at the video, please.
Thank you, Russ. So it normally takes a few seconds just to load.
To me, the scholarship is really the most amazing opportunity I could have possibly wished for. It didn't really feel like real life. I felt like I was a character being written in a book.
So before I went to America, I'd never travelled independently, and I was quite scared of doing a lot of things. And one thing it really helped me do was kind of teach me not to be afraid and to go and experience these new things and this whole world out there that you can go and explore.
I think that the scholarship has changed me because it gave me an amazing adventure in which I could have a think and have the space to start being creative away from my job, but thinking about where my future was going to go.
The scholarship's been a fantastic opportunity to visit States, learn more about the country, and to expand my professional network.
My confidence has soared really, which is amazing because I'm quite a confident person anyway.
I would encourage anyone to apply for the scholarship, whether you've never travelled before or whether you're looking for your own personal development or professional development. The scholarship can provide all that.
I've realised my ability to talk to anybody, to go anywhere and not need any instruction.
I might have to think about that one for a minute.
The scholarship has completely changed the course of my career. If I'd not done it, I'm sure I would be doing something much different now. The inspiration that I took from that trip is the reason that I'm now going the way that I'm going with my job and my life.
Don't hesitate, don't feel intimidated by thinking you're not good enough to do it. Just give it a go and try, because it will be the most amazing opportunity if you get a chance to do this.
You get what you put into the scholarship. The more you research, the more you plan, the more organisations you meet, the better experience you have.
It's great. It's played a great role in my personal development because it really puts you in unexpected situations, both personally and professionally.
There's no end to the inspiration I've found in America.
The scholarship to me means opportunity, and it means family. It means allowing you to go away and kind of spread your wings and have incredible experiences, but also to be rooted in a wonderful bunch of people back here in Nottingham who've all had that life-changing experience too.
To me, it's a life-changing experience.
There's no harm in applying, so go for it would really be my advice, I think.
You can tailor this experience to you. It's not somebody else telling you what to do, it's you creating your own adventure.
If you succeed and you get the scholarship, your life will change in ways you couldn't imagine.
So I think that video nicely sums up, just the impact that the scholarship has on individuals that are lucky enough to go on it. It's a fantastic video. So going back to what Russ says, we're always looking for opportunities for partners, for individuals to get involved in the scholarship, to help us. And we're at an exciting time where we're developing our 5-year plan. So if you know of any organizations, individuals that would love to get involved or help shape that, please put it in the chat, get in contact with us after the event, or speak to us at the networking event tonight. So really excited to kind of co-create the future of the scholarship. So I'm really excited to welcome our next speaker this evening. He is a 1994 Roosevelt Scholar and CEO of online retail giant ASOS. I'd like to welcome Nick Beaton. Welcome, Nick. Really excited to have you this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, everyone. Thank you, Sheridan. Thank you, Russell. I just found that sizzle reel very inspiring. I'm now the CEO of ASOS, which is a multinational e-commerce fashion business. But in 1994, I was a newly qualified chartered accountant. The object of my scholarship was to investigate the difference between the accounting profession and studies in the UK versus those in the US. That's how I started out, but it was very, very different. It was the first time I'd ever traveled abroad, and it was the first time I'd ever landed in a big city with no one waiting for me to take the other side. When I landed in JFK, I got a bus to Manhattan. The bus turfed me out by Grand Central Station, and then I had a complete panic that I realized I was alone. And ironically, I found myself in a hotel room and blew a disproportionate amount of my grant for the first 3 days, slowly building comfort to travel. And so thankfully that moment passed. And some of my best memories are actually when I allowed the experience just to take me to different places. It's one of the moments I look back on and go, never have I been to an airport before and said, what's the next plane out of here? So back then there was a Delta Pass that I bought, which gave you 90 days unlimited travel on Delta Airways. I don't know whether they still do it. And that was quite an exciting moment, just going to an airport and choosing the next one out within the next hour. A couple of my other best memories are beating Russell at tennis when I met him in Virginia. Actually, I don't know whether I did beat him, but it will be a fact for now until he joins in later. Meeting Haven Roosevelt, who we talked about earlier. I went to meet him in his office just off Wall Street. He was a city lawyer. And I took him a Davy lamp from Nottinghamshire. I got a suit crumpled up in my backpack that I'd taken specially for that. It was the only time I wore the suit. I then found myself wandering around various universities and various places to study the accounting profession. But it took me to a very different place. I learned the power of showing the Roosevelt business card. People went, oh, that's interesting. Tell me about that. And it led me to all kinds of places and all kinds of experiences. It brought me out of my shell. Back then, I'm barely recognizable to the person I've become, but I certainly was shy. I was certainly a bit more inhibited, and I certainly couldn't believe I'd found my way onto this scholarship. It's one of those I look back on and go, did I really do that? Wow, why didn't I do more? And it's one of those experiences that gets better with reflection and the learnings that I got on the back of it. So I can't thank the Roosevelt Scholarship enough for the experience it gave me some 27 years ago. When I met the secretary at the time, who was a chap called Roger Freeth, he handed me my scholarship grant, which I barely could believe when he gave me £3,000. I don't know what the number is now, but that's what it was then. And he said to me, have fun, send me a postcard every month, just so I know you're still well, and I'll see you in a few months. And then shook my hand, wished me luck, and off I went, which was quite remarkable. Learning, it certainly learned me to get me out of my shell. It taught me to be comfortable in an uncomfortable scenario. It taught me the power of just engaging and listening, and which is something that's an underrated skill. It taught me the power of curiosity, which is also an underrated skill, things that I've thankfully grown and crafted as I've developed. That's a bit of the impact I had. There's one story that I tell, which is I ended up in Lancaster County, which is the end of the line from the train in Philadelphia. I wanted to go and see the Amish country, which I did. On the way back, I sat on the platform with a backpack with everything I was traveling with. Some guy came up to me and started talking to me. I felt intimidated, and so I gave him a defense story, a coping mechanism. I gave him a bit of a sob story that I'd run out of money and I was on my way back to England. And then he opened up and told me about his life story. And his life story was far more traumatic than what I was experiencing, even though I just told him that I'd told him something that was probably far from the truth. And he opened up a packet of cigarettes on the top of his shirt. And I said, it's okay, I don't smoke. And he went, no, I'm getting the next train. And I went, sorry, I don't smoke, thank you. And he pulled out a $20 note and said to me, I know what it's like not to have anything. Here's $20. Buy yourself something to eat and drink on the train. Now, that's a set of kindness that has never been shown to me. I kept that $20 note. I still have it at my office at home. I'm at work today, and it reminds me that there are good people in the world, and it reminds me, no matter how hard your experiences are, someone else has something different, and the power of kindness transcends boundaries, individuals, and people. So that's one of my enduring moments. But I mean, the stories are go on and on and on. I never really understood how great the Roosevelt family were until it was many years later. I read all about them and followed up on them, and I went to all these wonderful places with Haven and members of his family, and it was only later I really truly understood the impact that the Roosevelt family and FDR himself had on the world. So it's something that I carry with me, and I'm super proud to have been a long line of scholars who have enjoyed that experience. Today, how it's impacted my career. So today I employ 3,000 people in North America. We have a facility and center in Georgia. And ironically, when I went to open the distribution center in Georgia, I took the opportunity to go to visit the Little White House in Macon, Georgia, which is the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and went to see the very spot where I stood 24 years ago with a chap called Jonathan Dunlop, who was Russell's co-scholar back in 1983. And I went to revisit the spot that he and I went to when we went for a bike ride in Blue Ridge Mountains, and went to go and revisit the Little White House that I visited with him. So it's an enduring link with my career. It's an enduring link in my learning, enduring link in my memories, and has probably been transformational in helping me become the person I am today. Those are my stories, Sheridan, and I thank the scholarship for continuing to drive this forward. I think it's extremely brave, and it's something that 20-something people in Nottinghamshire will love and prosper and treasure for all those lucky enough to do it.
Thank you, Nick. That was fascinating. Some of the things you mentioned there just brought back happy memories for myself. The element of spontaneous that comes with the scholarship, where you meet just so many different people who who invite you back to their house, who invite you to connect with their friends and family in different parts of the country. And I think when new scholars come to the program, we always encourage them not to have their itinerary set in stone, that to be open, be flexible to the invites and the opportunities that come with being part of the scholar. And it sounds like you had the similar kind of random opportunities presented to you. Also, the thing you mentioned about the Roosevelt name, certainly the Roosevelt name opens so many doors across America, and to people, it has that prominence, which I think you would agree with.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what business cards you'd need to carry in the UK to open the doors that it seems to open in the US. And I certainly had underestimated where flashing that little business card took me. So I was in the UN with an ambassador. I went to various universities, met some amazing people just because I flashed this card, and the experiences are memorable. And I don't think I could travel around the UK for 3 months and have so many people offer me somewhere to stay. But it certainly happens when you flash that Roosevelt card in North America.
And what you said about the confidence boost as well, it is that kind of pinch me moment when you get to America. When I don't know if you flew into JFK or but the realization that you are in America, and that boost of confidence where it kind of forces you to start conversations with people that you probably wouldn't do in the UK. But in that situation, you're forced to go out and make the most of the opportunity.
It's kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to have to talk to someone. I better get on with it now.
Yeah, it's just an amazing opportunity, and one of the things we're looking at the scholarship is to build those lasting relationships from organisations that we meet, and keep the relationships going year after year between. I think collectively, all the scholars, we've probably met hundreds of different organisations and individuals over the years, and if we can even keep even some of those relationships alive and going, I think it just goes to show the strength of this scholarship.
So one of the requirements that Russ sent me was to try and dig out some old photographs. Now, obviously, 1994 was pre-iPhone. I found that challenge quite intimidating. So I've been bothering my mother to say, have I left some photographs with you somewhere? Because I can't find any for this evening, but I'll certainly dig some out when I find them.
That'll be great. I mean, as I mentioned, we're hoping to get some heritage funding. So we'll be creating displays representing different decades and different scholars. So we'll certainly love to see those photographs on the display.
Great.
I'd like to thank you again for taking the time out to come here this evening. It's been great, and I look forward to the engaging with you in the future and in our future events as well. So thank you again, Nick.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you all, and thanks for inviting me. A real pleasure.
Thank you. So I would like to welcome our next scholar, Henry Franklin. Henry is one of our more recent scholars. He went out in 2019, and he'll be giving us a brief overview of what he went out to America for, and also the work he's been doing with the alumni engagement strategy. Over to you, Henry.
Hello and good evening, everyone. So this time last year, I was actually tucking into my first ever Thanksgiving dinner. I'd spent the afternoon deep fat frying a turkey on someone's driveway, and followed that by spending the evening sampling the host's whiskey collection. I don't even like whiskey, but after a couple of tasters, I soon forgot about that. Dinner was with an American family that I'd met the day before, and it was the best example of American hospitality that I experienced during my 6 weeks in the States. As Sheridan said, my name's Henry Franklin, scholar number 186, and between October and December last year, I was in the States exploring how the construction industry there was using manufacturing processes and techniques to build the next generation of housing, hospitals, and schools. I traveled all the way down the West Coast along the highways, flew to Austin, drove to Houston, then flew up again to Boston, down through New York City. And during that time, visited over 25 different companies and organizations that were doing sort of really innovative things in offsite construction. The trip also gave me the opportunity to dial into American culture. You know, Sheridan's pointed out that's a key part of the experience. That for me was hiring a Harley in San Francisco, rode across the desert to Vegas, which took about 2 or 3 days. I went to a few gigs and also did the sites. So you'll see in the photos there, bit of a snapshot of what I got up to. I actually discovered the scholarship when my mother-in-law sent me an article on LinkedIn. It sort of ran through all of the really interesting history, the scholarship's inception. I applied. 3 months later, I was being interviewed by the trustees, and 3 months after that, I was on a flight. But one of the things that really appealed to me, and a key driver for applying, was the opportunity to join the Roosevelt Club. And that's an alumni association, so it's a club for past scholars. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to meet sort of like-minded people, proactive people in and around Nottingham. As Sheridan's also mentioned, scholars are expected to join the management team when they return to the UK. So I did that in December this year. And I was actually given responsibility for the Roosevelt Club, which is great because that's one of the main drivers for me applying. The vision for the alumni is that it's an active group that provides a network of contacts, reinforces the scholarship experience, and gives the opportunity for past scholars to give back. You know, and I really want it to be a group of people that can help one another out with the various initiatives and projects that they are involved with and leading. I think a good example of this is my own experience. You know, I changed role in March. I joined a startup company in Nottingham that's developing a new energy storage system. I reported this out at the management meeting, and immediately I was put in touch with a member of Nottingham City Council, a member of the team there who was responsible for solar and storage projects. So there's now a great relationship there, which will help me to fine tune that energy storage product that we're developing, and also a potential first customer for when we commercialize and, you know, are ready to sell something. So I think it's a great example of the power of the Roosevelt Club. To give you an idea of what running the club entails, so it's a direct communication with the alumni once a year, and during that communication, it's a brief update from me to them on scholarship activity and upcoming events such as this. It's an opportunity for me to encourage a donation to help support the scholarship financially, and also a chance to ask for photos and stories about the scholars' time, so that those can be sort of documented and shared via the newsletter that we publish. It also means revising the alumni database. So we've got a database with over 200 names on it. I want to update that with business and professional interests to help encourage collaboration between alumni. It's also a job of liaising with the management team to host relevant and interesting events such as this. And also part of the role is establishing contacts with lost scholars. So those that we don't have up-to-date contact information for, part of my job is to go and try and hunt those guys down. What does that look like over the last 6 months? Well, we've made over 40 direct communications with past scholars, so that accounts for about 25% of the total alumni. I've been ably assisted in that by a number of the management committee, so thank you for your help there. Managed to find 2 past scholars, so through a bit of stalking on LinkedIn and Facebook, established contact with 2 past scholars and updated all of their information on the system, so they're now up to date with what we're doing as a scholarship. And it also uncovered some great stories through the one-to-one calls. So I've spoken to scholars who have met with Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of the president, and sailed on her yachts under Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. I've spoken to a scholar whose research project was to look at client management in the legal profession in the States. And they went on to be Attorney General of the Falkland Islands. So I'm looking forward to inviting him along to talk at a future event, because I think he'll have some really interesting stories to tell. And I've also talked to really successful local business people. So brother and sister Philip and Mary, now owners of Weaver's Wine Merchant in the centre of Nottingham. They spent their scholarship exploring wine production techniques in California and along the West Coast. And I think that sounds like a great excuse for spending some time in the States. And it all goes to show the great sort of depth and breadth of experience that it's possible to get from the scholarship. Look ahead for the next 6 months. So I'll be continuing direct communications with alumni, hoping to plan more future events with the management team. You know, could this be an in-person event? You know, feels unlikely maybe for the next 6 months, but looking beyond that, I'd really like to host a few Roosevelt Club lunches, make it a bit more informal. And I think it would be a great excuse to get everyone together, or a group of us together, and hear about the various initiatives and projects that people are involved with. And also, I'd like to welcome ideas from the rest of alumni. So this evening is a great chance to hear directly from you. What events do you want me and the management team to host and put on? So people have been using the chat function already. If you do have ideas, please drop them in there, or stick around at the end of this evening, and I'll be there to talk to if you've got ideas around what you'd like to see the management team doing. And with that, I'll hand you back to Sheridan. I think he's doing an absolutely fantastic job as compare. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Henry. That's great, and it's so important that we re-engage with our alumni. So there's so many of them that unfortunately we've lost contact with over the years. So the work that Henry is leading on is really starting to open up those doors and re-engage with so many individuals with fascinating stories. I think over 70 years we've probably got scholars who've experienced key moments in American history, from the Cold War to the Civil Rights Movement to more recent political movements in the US. So the amount of knowledge and experiences collectively we have is a fascinating database compository of experiences, and that's why we're keen to get this heritage funding so that we can capture these stories. So as Henry mentioned, if you've got any ideas on what you would like to see as part of an alumni, hopefully you are all receiving the alumni newsletter as well. But also, if you've got any contacts with alumni that may not have been involved recently, please let us know so that we can re-engage with them. So I'd like to invite our next speaker on. Our next speaker comes from the pages of history, from the 1620s, in fact. He's a leading figure of the separatist movement, a Mayflower passenger, and one of the founding signatories of the Mayflower Compact. It is, of course, William Brewster, otherwise known as our 2020 Mayflower Scholar, Tom Cable. Tom is the founder of Blue Kazoo, which is an educational organization that brings history alive. Welcome, Tom. You're looking very dapper in your garms there.
Good evening, everybody. I know I was going to suggest this to Nick. I think there should be a pilgrim's range on ASOS. But I will explain very, very soon why I am dressed like this. This isn't my normal outfit. So my name's Tom, and I'm the first themed scholar coming from the Roosevelt Scholarship. And I had the challenge of going over to America to learn about Nottinghamshire's connection to the Mayflower story. And this talk is going to start with a bit of a confession. This time last year, I didn't know what the Mayflower story actually was. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. It's a story that we're not overly keen of talking about over in the UK. It's something that's in pretty much all the elementary schools in America, but for some reason we don't want to talk about it over here. And so I was really interested in why that was, coming from a background of education. I'm going to try to avoid the coronavirus word as much as possible, but I was in America in March when it all happened, which kind of threw some of my plans out the window and made me have to think on my feet very, very quickly. And as everybody was talking about earlier, you can rely on the kindness of strangers out there. I actually ended up with a family who were looking after me and allowed me to live in there and stay in their house for free. They're incredibly kind, and I still talk to them most weeks ever since I've been back in the UK. I thank them for everything that they did for me. But 2020 was a massive year for a lot of other reasons as well. They've probably been overshadowed by this huge virus. The most significant part of this year for me was seeing the Edward Colston statue toppling over. I think that was a very critical time in UK history and how we present history in a more accessible way for more people. I'm sure you're all aware of all the different things that have been going on, discussions about Winston Churchill's past, and it's a really, really interesting time for museums and heritage sites across the UK and in the US. I think that there's been a lot of conversations about how we can represent history in a more accurate way. And I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking that it's quite a niche topic to be talking about and probably doesn't have that much of an impact on you. But just thinking back in the last few years, there's a whole generation of children who are growing up thinking that P.T. Barnum is this all singing, all dancing, Hugh Jackman type character, when that definitely was not the case. And I'm sure a lot of you have been influenced your opinions on the royal family thanks to Netflix series The Crown. And I think that this year is the chance to be really thinking about how we present history, particularly in the way that we tell stories. Now, the reason why I'm dressed like this is because my business is in primary school education and mainly using role play to tell these stories. Now, prior to my visit to America and prior to these interesting stories coming out this year, it used to be that I would get dressed up as Vikings, Romans, Egyptians, the kind of things that we all did at primary school. And I would go in and try to make it a bit more fun. Now, since going over to America and looking at how they tell stories and why they tell stories, it's really influenced what I do. Now, the Mayflower story is a fascinating one because, as I say, over here, it's unlikely that you know the full extent of the story because it's just not talked about. And probably even less so, you may not understand that Nottinghamshire has some really strong links to that story. The separatist movement, which began this story, started with William Brewster in North Nottinghamshire. And so it's something that I think that we should all be talking about, something that we should have a lot more awareness and knowledge about. But the issue is that the story starts with quite a lot of political and religious context. This is a true story. I bought the, I think it was called the Mayflower Pilgrims book to get a bit of an insight into this story. Because as I said, I didn't know what this story was last year. And it's a 300-page, a very thick hardback book that I wanted to read and learn about the Mayflower Pilgrims from. And I got to the end of the book and they hadn't even set sail on the boat yet. I read 300 and something pages all about Henry VIII and the nuances of Christian denominations. And that is exactly as thrilling as it sounds. It probably wasn't the best introduction to this story. And I could start to see why it wasn't being talked about over here because it was quite dry. But the story itself, the voyage on the Mayflower is incredible. I don't have the time to kind of go through it all. But it's essentially a group of religious rebels who wanted to go out and form their own separatist movement, some merchant adventurers, people who wanted to go overseas and seize an opportunity to make some money. And there was also a few people who were sent on that boat because they simply didn't want them. There's the example of the Moore children, who were a group of children who basically just got sent off because they were a byproduct of an affair, and this couple didn't want to look after these children anymore. It's quite a remarkable story. And essentially they traveled over to America and began claiming land over there. And this is where some of the language becomes very interesting. I think that because of the story being retold and being repeated, we end up with these phrases that are quite well, they're just wrong, really. The two that I want to talk about in particular is Pilgrim Fathers, which is used very, very often and is completely inaccurate. The women and children were so vital to the survival of these men, and things would have been a heck of a lot worse if the women weren't on board with them in that place. So Pilgrim Fathers kind of diminishes the work that all the women and children did on board that boat. And the other term that I want to get rid of in this revision of how we present history is the idea of a new world. Before the Pilgrims arrived in America, the Native Americans had been living there for thousands and thousands of years. And so to think of it as being a new world and unclaimed is completely untrue. And so that's an example of some of the phrases and wording that have been repeated for hundreds of years since this story began, that we're trying to get rid of and try to reevaluate as we go forward in history education. You see, I think that getting dressed up and talking about these issues is a fantastic way of engaging new children and young people in these stories. There are some gruesome bits in the story. The colonies kind of eventually led to the King Philip's War, which was the bloodiest war in America. It's the kind of thing that you wouldn't want to be talking to a 7-year-old child about. And I'm not obviously saying that we should be doing that. I'm saying that we can find discussions and find parallels between what's going on in the world today and what happened 400 years ago, and find some interesting discussions and ways of sparking conversations with young people. You see, children have a fantastic imagination, much, much better than we do. And so if we can create conversations that encourage them to consider both sides of the story and how it would feel to be a part of each of those sides of it, I think we're going to strive for much more accurate and fair storytelling in our history presentation. And I think that we can also learn so much from what happened during that time. So since I've been back here, I've been working with museums and heritage sites in the UK to promote this kind of storytelling. I've been using video technology with museums such as the Basset Law Museum and Pilgrims Gallery in Retford, which I highly, highly recommend if you want to learn more about this story. And I'm now working with Newark. I've progressed slightly in the timeline, and I'm now talking about the English Civil War in Newark at the Civil War Museum, Palace Theatre and Newark Castle. And none of these things probably would have happened if I didn't get the chance to go on this scholarship. I've created so many fantastic contacts, and it has progressed my career and completely changed how I run my business and how I approach history as well. So it's been such a fantastic year, and it shouldn't be overshadowed by what's happened with the coronavirus. Yes, it may have changed how we tell our stories, but I don't think I'd be able to be speaking to 72 people today from all over the UK if it wasn't for the technology that we've got now. And so, yeah, if anybody's got any questions about the Mayflower story itself, I'm sorry I didn't get to kind of go into any detail about it now, but I wouldn't have been able to do it justice. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat after I finish speaking, if anybody would like to ask me a question or talk about it any further. But for now, I'm going to thank you very much for listening and pass you back to our wonderful host, Sheridan. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And as Tom mentioned, there's so much to tell that I think we need a dedicated hour just to hear that story alone. And this is just the potential of the scholarship. The scholarship is certainly an enabler. It opens up new doorways, not only in America, but when you get back. And through the support of the leader of the county council, Councillor Kay Cutts, who supported the scholarship, and the Mayflower Scholarship in particular, and also Mandy Ram, who's helped Tom to do the research and created links to Nottinghamshire schools. The scholarship is an enabler, and it opens up so many doorways when you return. And I believe that the themed scholarship approach is a potential future direction of the scholarship. If you can imagine, Tom representing the heritage industries, what could happen if we sent scholars representing the low carbon industry, life science, digital? There's so many potential opportunities to send themed scholars to America to build those relationships with American organizations and bring new ideas and new innovation back to Nottinghamshire. So this is certainly the benchmark, and who knows where it could go. So again, if anybody's got any ideas on particular sectors or themes that the scholarship might want to look at, please put it in the chat, send us an email, or speak to us at the end during the networking session. So I'd like to move on with into our next guest. So I'd like to welcome Chris Aylett. He's our 1969 Roosevelt Scholar and Chief Executive of the Motorsport Industry Association. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Sharon. Sheridan, not Sharon. What did I say that for? I suppose I've got this position because I'm probably the scholar nearest to the Mayflower. Yeah, but anyway, people from 1969 and further back, yes, scholars still survive. First of all, I've got to thank you for inviting me. And I was reminded by the earlier speakers that it forces one to look back. And so believe it or not, I hadn't looked at any of my old files until I was invited to this. And it's 51 years ago, just to realize the period we're talking about. Really fun to look into those dusty old files. And I actually do have online all my photographs. I moved them online. So I could have shared some, but I have to make sure that they're carefully monitored. I'm just going to tell you about that period because when I reflected on this, who was I then? So that you understand the young people that are winning now, who was this chap who boarded the 3-month-old transatlantic liner, the QE2, with amazement. And what happened to me? Well, I was 22 years old. I lived in Haileybury Road in West Bridgford. I went to the Nottingham High School, and I left that school to follow a profession, not like the accountancy that was mentioned earlier, but insurance. And I slogged away at that for 6 years, working for Norwich Union in the Market Square, and across the other side, Standard Life in Nottingham. And I just moved when I won the scholarship to Hogg Robinson, which was a broker, insurance broker at Lloyd's. And I'd realized at that time how totally boring my choice of career was. I have no idea how I persuaded myself to become qualified in insurance. So it came at a perfect time. I realized I was a director of a thing called the City Club. And if you've got any real old fogies that are on this call, they may remember that. That was on Market Street, and I had a look earlier. It's where the Revolution de Cuba place is, in the middle of Nottingham. It was the old Reform Club. So the official plan for me to go to America with the Roosevelt Scholarship was to, if you believe it, meet and learn more about the USA insurance market. I am very pleased to hear that other scholars leave this country with every ambition to improve the career they have and then do a volte-face and find something far more interesting. That happened to me, as you'll hear. But what awaited me in America, some of you may know about 1969, 500,000 troops in Vietnam, 50,000 whom had been killed already. The largest demonstration that there's ever been in the USA, right across America, had 2 million people on the streets. The Boeing 747, the jumbo jet, was launched as I arrived. Woodstock took place in August. 400,000 young people on a 100-acre farm. Came quite a shock to the farm owner. The Nottingham group that was playing there was 10 years after. And if you're interested in rock music, go and look at the YouTube of Woodstock. And just before the end of the 3 days, you'll see 10 years after, and they were so popular they weren't allowed to leave the stage. Went on to become millionaires and great success. Sharon Tate murders took place as I was arriving in New York, and in the same month, the first man steps on the moon. What an extraordinary year to travel across the USA on your own. I couldn't have planned it better. You'll all know that my plan was, I'd worked out that overnight bed costs takes too much money of scholarship money, so I had to try and sleep free. My major pre-visit mailings secured me beds with many families that I knew little of, but as always, they offered generously to put up the Roosevelt Scholar. I worked out that if I bought 2 3-month passes for the Greyhound bus, it would be the cheapest way I could sleep, which was overnight. And I did coast to coast and back again on Greyhound bus, not a single flight. 5 months was what I set myself, 5 or 6 months, and I'd come back when the money ran out or my energy expired. I did 28 to 30 states. Generosity was everywhere, just as we've heard. I spoke at dinners and junior chamber dinners and various other things, and they always had a whip round and helped the Roosevelt Scholar. I have to say I returned, the money never ran out, but my energy certainly did. So that was just to set the scene as to this young man going over to America. I'd never been to America and I knew no Americans. The highlights, so many of them. Some are best forgotten. Photo evidence is available, but the photo evidence shows me on the Colorado River going through the Grand Canyon, meeting Raquel Welch, which was strangely reported in a headline in the West Bridgford News when I returned. I thought, with all the other benefits of Roosevelt Scholarship, I thought they could have moved on to something more important. There's a picture of me in the cockpit, and strange enough, standing inside the engine nacelle of indeed #1 jumbo jet. Somehow I was the guest of Boeing. The president of Boeing's card is in my books, and somehow, as all Roosevelt scholars, that's what I got into. I was in the dugout with the best quarterback back in New York, in NFL, New York Jets, Joe Namath, the NFL's greatest character. He was voted last year. And the one memory that stays with me is the country is endlessly breathtaking. I've been back many, many times, and I never cease to be amazed. in the snow of Yellowstone Park or water skiing in Florida. It's just a memorable physical experience. I spoke at many dinners and I took part in local radio competitions. I could win $10 for just knowing what day of the week it was. I visited General Motors, Boeing, and many other factories, just as the other scholars have said. I found it curious that for a 22-year-old sprog from Nottingham that didn't have much experience, business leaders genuinely found time for me. And they even found some of the things I was saying, they said was interesting, which was flattering. They were never anything other than generous. Well, that's the most outstanding memory I have is pretty much what everyone else has said, which I find quite touching. The generosity of the people, without exception. They give time, introductions, help, assistance, and on reflection, all for no direct benefit to themselves. It was said earlier, but we don't do that in the UK, in England. We didn't do it when I came back, and we still don't do it now. I try my hardest to remember what it was about, but it's hard. This is not the way this country was brought up. But in America, because they have this vast, expansive country, I'm told, they just have an open door policy, and it pays off and it shows. From this, I learned, you asked me, what did I learn? Well, I learned to try my best to be similarly generous for my life. Very tough for a Brit, but I'm told I've done okay. I'm not winning any awards, but I do try and mirror those acts of generosity right across my business life and everything else. The country, don't forget, when I was there, had enormous civil unrest, suffering of war, their young children being killed in Vietnam. But still, those people were positive, energetic, enthusiastic, forward-looking, and supremely confident. How could I not learn from people like that? My future ethos in business and my own life tried to mirror that. My lead interrogator, my wife that is, of 27 years, I asked her about those things, and I said, so what am I like? Well, so I go and tell my colleagues, other scholars. She says, you picked up from America, I think. You're endlessly ambitious. I only think big. I'm fiercely ambitious, apparently, insatiably curious, and very optimistic. I have a feeling, if you want to write it down, that's what I got from the scholarship, all those assets. I was just a pimply-faced insurance boy when I went on to the QE2. The impact on my career, well, it was direct. In one of the dinners that I spoke at, maybe earned myself $10, someone approached me later and said, we'd like to talk to you, we're coming to England. A year later, it was the New York Stock Exchange listed company. It was opening this company called Gladding Corporation that was founded in 1816, a major, and this was funny at the time because it was a 48-hour week back in the UK at that time, a leisure conglomerate. I came back to tell my family and they said, what do you mean leisure? There's no business in leisure. I said, you know, I think people are going to get weekends off soon. So I came back and I joined this major leisure conglomerate. They were opening up an international division, and they figured that because I was English, then I was the most international person they'd met. So they gave me a role over here. I was the second employee of their new international operation. It was their company was a multi-billion-dollar organization. They manufactured motorhomes, boats, fishing tackle, CB radios, which were the big thing at the time. They were the biggest manufacturer. And there was I in the UK handling sales and developing business with all those. They gave me a boat building business in Italy and told me to run that when I was 25. I traveled the world buying, selling products, and it was all based on that introduction through Roosevelt Scholarship. It absolutely changed my life. I have to say, following that, I tried to buy divisions of the company out of a Chapter 11 period. I failed to do that, but that's still a good experience, as anyone who's in business knows. So I decided to set up in opposition. If they didn't have the good sense to let me buy the company, I'll oppose them. And I was able to buy them 2 years later. And then I went on to some success with that company in the leisure business. And I sold that business to other partners. I went solo. I set up a business that represented and sold around Europe the Swiss Army knife in various countries. I had fitness products to distribute around the world. That's Gold's Gym, which you may know, and fishing tackle, which was one of the areas. I sold that out to a public company some years back. I'd always raced cars. So as far as I was concerned, if I could do something in that business, that I would. So I created a race series, found sponsors, created a race series, put it on TV, sold it. I was racing pretty rare race cars, Aston Martins, McLarens, and so on. And as I had been the president of the sports industry because of all those previous years, they asked if I would set up a company or an organization to handle the business of motorsport, which in the UK is now is a 10 to 12 billion pound business, but around the world is an $80 billion business. And I have offices now in Charlotte and in Indianapolis and in Shanghai. Best fun in the world I could ever have, traveling the world still, meeting everybody in motorsport. We're in the entertainment business and the engineering business and racing high-speed cars. I'm still got that full-time role. I decided some years ago when I officially retired that my best hobby was business. So, and it sure beats gardening. So that's the job I have today. And as I say, right at the start, the whole life changed when I won this scholarship. And I thank you for that. And I thank you again for allowing me to research those old books and share some of it with you. I'd be proud to help the club develop. And if people want to hear a story from a guy from '69, please give me a call. Thank you.
That's great. That's fascinating. I think that's a prime example of how the Roosevelt Scholarship creates ripple effects across your whole life, essentially, and generates those new opportunities and new leads. I can only imagine what it must have been like actually being on the QE2 and just seeing the New York landscape appear on the horizon and get closer and closer. So and being Boeing's kind of keynote speaker, I guess. I think it's been mentioned that you find yourself in all sorts of situations on the Roosevelt Scholarship, and you make the best of them. And it's those kind of spontaneous, random experiences that often stay with you for your lifetime. So I'd just like to thank you again, Chris, for speaking. I think we could listen to you all night with your anecdotes and your experiences, and I can't wait to see that photo collection as well when we get the Heritage Lottery and we create a display. So really appreciate your time tonight.
A real pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'd just like to invite. I don't know what happened there. I think I think I got too trigger happy. So I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Tori Harrison. Tori is a 2018 scholar, and she'll be just going over some of the ways that you can actually help us support the scholarship. Over to you, Tori.
Thanks, Sheridan. Hi, everyone. I think we can all see a real theme of generosity that everybody shares in this scholarship. And so in the spirit of that, I'd like to tell you all how you can get involved in the scholarship. If you fancy yourself as a bit of an entrepreneur, or you have a passion for a particular project and you're living or you're working in Nottinghamshire and are lucky enough to be between 21 and 35 years old, then we would love you to apply. Please come to us, have a chat with us if you have an idea. There's a big group of us running this committee, and we'd love to hear your ideas, and we'll be opening applications next year, even if we won't be able to do any traveling for a while. If you are an employer, as we've said, as Sheridan was describing before, you could sponsor the scholarship, maybe using a CPD or a CSR budget. They're quite good options. And everyone here tonight, consider how you can support the scholarship by donating maybe connections, people that might want to sort of weigh in or can just spread the news as advocates. If you have expertise, we had that film made, we'd love to have that sort of support as well. And if you're in the position to consider a financial gift, then we can take direct debits, will donations. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that. That's my special area. And I really want to let you know about an exciting opportunity we've got this year. If anyone can consider a single donation to the scholarship this year between now and the new year, then we've got a special match funding opportunity where your donations will be doubled. You can send a check, or you can go online, or just email me and we can chat about it. But the donations will be doubled thanks to the generosity of one of our alumni. So thanks very much to them. Back to you, Sheridan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tori. And again, as Tori mentioned, the income that we generate is the lifeblood of the scholarship. It's what allows us to fund the scholars to go out to America. So we've built some great partnerships, but it's very much about the individual donations to keep the scholarship going for another 75 years. So again, if you have any comments or suggestions on how we could raise more money through any grant organizations as well. So if anybody has any link with any philanthropic foundations, please send them our way and we'll get in touch with them. As I say, it's so key for the long-term security of the scholarship. So that's great. Just going to invite the last speaker on tonight. I'd like to welcome Mick Burrows, the chairman of the scholarship. Welcome, Mick.
Thank you. How on earth do I follow that? It's been fantastic. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to all our fantastic speakers, particularly Nick and Chris, returning to us and sharing gold dust stories, which I'd love to hear more of and see some of those photos. Tom and Henry as well, with your experiences, which I've heard firsthand. And also to Alicia and Tori for their bits that they've done tonight. Isn't it great to celebrate something positive, happy, that's got a great feeling around it? And amidst everything that's going on in these challenging times, the scholarship is still flourishing. We've had to pause this year, as people know. We've had a good round of applicants earlier in this year. We just managed to get Tom back from America before everything locked down, and that was a bit of a panic moment for us, but well done, Tom, for escaping at that time. But it's been an interesting time for us. I particularly like to thank the Roosevelt family. We're really positive and pleased that Haven is still with us and holding in the background, but Sarah has come forward. She's got a real link with us, and it's fantastic, as already been said, to have a highly valued and unique relationship with the US, and it still carries that badge. As trustees and scholars, and there's many trustees here tonight, and there's many ex-chairmen and chairmen and alumni with us tonight, we have a responsibility, actually. We have a responsibility and a privilege to nurture and protect something that would be quite easy to let go, because it requires and depends on a lot of goodwill, but actually it's a treasure that's unique to Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. It's got significant national value. The stories that people have shared with us and the experiences that they've carried onto the national stage. And there's been several projects that I've listened to since I became chairman 4 years ago that have gone on to create great solutions to some of the challenges in society. So all of that to me makes everything we do worth every single jot of effort. We've enjoyed continued support from many local organisations, including the county and the city councils. It was fantastic to have that themed opportunity that Tom took to do the Mayflower Scholarship. We're looking forward to doing more themed approaches because they really do put some grit into the machine of what's going on. We've also had Nottingham City Business Club as a lifelong supporter, and I think Deborah's here with us tonight, and several other loyal partners who give great support. Our sincere thanks to you all, and particularly to the Lord Mayor and the Chairman who turn out on cold winter evenings to sit around the table with us and try and help solve some of the conundrums. Meantime, the future, trustees and management team, and I have to pay tribute to the management team, by the way, every single one of you, for everything you do with your weekly Zooms and everything else that you create and bring forward. We've got a very helpful offer of an input from Richard Donovan from Experian. Richard's head of global and international relationships, and Richard's going to challenge us. He's the facilitator challenger to see what we really should be doing for the future and where Roosevelt Scholarship Nottinghamshire sits. We can't sit on our laurels and just sit and rely on things to continue. We're in a changing world of global dynamics that we've never experienced before. So Richard's taking us through a 2-month challenge with lots of Zoom sessions that's going to relate us more to global dynamics and what local business priorities are, because we are not going to get funding and support from local government to the level we've had it in the past. They're in quite a tricky place. So we've got to look to different solutions. And already Tori's outlined some of the things you might be able to do to help, but we will bring more back to you on where we're going with this in the new year as trustees and ourselves sit around the table with Richard. May I also thank all of you who have given so generously to donations in the past year. We are a charity. We do need to raise finance to continue realising the potential of local young people, as you've heard. Our ambition is to support 5 scholars per year over the next 5 years. So we want 25 scholars going from Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. We tend to send 2, possibly 3, but our ambition is to get to 5. We think that's worthwhile, not just beneficial for the individual, but to society as a whole for what those projects come back and do to help people. So finally, big thanks to Russ and Sheridan. You're the anchors. I look to you two to tell me what to do and to tell the rest of us trustees what to do with the support of management team. I want to say a big thanks to colleague trustees who give so generously of their time and thought and effort. And also to everyone here tonight. There's 75 pictures up there. There's 74 chats going on. Oh, Deborah, thanks, you are here. Well done, Deborah. I can do 2 things at once, you see. Read a chat and speak at the same time. But I do hope from this absolutely stunning celebration session, which I think has probably been the best we've ever done because it's got 75 people around the table, that you will follow us, stay with us. It's a big family, this is. I wasn't a scholar, but I can see what the scholarship has done to people, and I'm very proud to be the chairman. So hopefully from now, you will be a Roosevelt ambassador and supporter for the future. Thank you very much. Back to you, Sheridan.
Thanks, Mick. I'd just like to reiterate what Mick said in terms of thanking all the speakers this evening and everybody for attending. It's been such a success, and I'm looking forward to having more events in the new year. I think the online virtual format is here to stay, but I hope that many of us can meet in person as and when it's safe to do so. That brings to an end the formal presentations of this evening. But the fun doesn't stop there. We've still got a little bit more, if I can move the screen forward. So now we enter the virtual networking opportunity facilitated by Rachel Armitage. And also Sam Preston, who's our 2019 scholar, has been on the social media, as I mentioned at the start. So if you feel inspired, if you've got any comments you'd like to share to the world through Twitter, please post them on Twitter, and Sam will reshare them and retweet them. Also, we've got a Facebook page that you can like, and also a LinkedIn page as well. So I'd like to hand over to Rachel. Over to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Sheridan, and thank you to everybody for being with us tonight. It has been an incredible evening hearing from everybody, and it's amazing to see some familiar faces in the chat box and in the participants list, and also some new folks too. So hopefully we have a mix of alumni, and we also have some new potential applicants with us, and maybe some business leaders too. So yes, this is now the opportunity for us to have a bit of a chat and have some discussion. So the way we want to run this is, if you can stick around, you can either ask questions or pose comments or queries in the chat section, or if you go to the participants option in your Zoom, you should be able to see a raise hand option. So if there's anything that you want to ask, please do pop your hand up and I will come to you. And if you want to turn your camera on, you should now all be able to unmute yourselves. So if you're called on, you can ask questions in that way. Equally, if you want to talk to us through social media, Sam's monitoring our Twitter. So you can tweet any questions you have using the hashtag #RooseveltThanks, and our Twitter handle is @NotRoosevelt. So just shoot us some questions there, or a bit of love on social media would be great as well. So if there's anything you've heard tonight that's inspiring, has made you, reinvigorate your love for this awesome scholarship, then do shout about us online. So with that said, do we have any questions from the audience at the minute? I see lots happening in the chat, but I can't quite follow it all so quickly. So if there is anything that people want to ask, maybe potential participants, this could be a great opportunity to ask this collective of alumni, you know, any advice for applying, good opportunity to do so, or any questions or queries about what help we need and how you can give it. That's great. If not, what I would like to do, inspired, I guess, by Nick's point about his $20, everybody who's previously been on the scholarship, I think, has been asked on their return, tell me about what happened. What's your kind of number one thing? And I'm sure we're all familiar with the sensation of, I mean, how long do you have? And you want to sit people down and talk to them for hours about what you've been up to. But I wonder if I can ask our alumni, what is your kind of number one go-to story when you have to succinctly pin down your experience in 30 seconds to somebody, just to let them know how you got on? What's your go-to tale of the peak thing that describes your time in the US? Well, I guess some of our management committee, I think you must have some points for me on this one. What's your go-to takeaway that you say? Go on,
can I
Corey.
jump in?
Sorry, Sam, I'm sure you could go afterwards. I think I was really blown away when I was staying in Oakland, and I mentioned to my lovely host that I'd never been to one of the national parks, and really would love to go to Yosemite. And she was a reasonable distance away, but decided there and then that we were going the next day. Told me to cancel any plans that I had, and booked us into a lodge in the middle of Yosemite National Park and drove us the over 5 hours there just to get there, because she couldn't imagine. She goes every year with her family and wanted me to see it, and it was so incredible to be looked after that way. And she was so excited to show me around something that was so familiar to her, but that was really sort of something that filled me completely with awe. So that is something, looking around, as Chris was saying before, looking at being in these incredible landscapes, and I will never forget that. That's my takeaway for sure.
I mean, a great one as well. That's enough to knock somebody's socks off at the coffee maker in the office, isn't it? Go on, Sam. Let's have yours as well.
I've just seen some amazing ones in the chat. Actually, we should definitely go through those as well. I was going to say, just one just popped into my head randomly. I just often felt like I was in the right place at the right time, like very magically. Like I said in that video, like I don't know, I was being guided or something. It was kind of strange. One of those times I was in Honolulu, and I just was at a meeting with someone, and they said, hey, I'm about to go and see this amazing bill being passed. We think it's going to pass. It's the most progressive, maybe this is a bit nerdy for like non-environmentalists, but like the most progressive single-use plastics policy in the US, in US history. Do you want to come? I was like, yeah. So went along to this amazing city hall, and just the atmosphere. There were just so many people waiting for this to pass, like witnessing history. And I sat down like front row next to this guy, and he turned to me, he had a British accent, and he's like, you're from Nottingham, aren't you? And I was like, what? And it just so happened we'd been at another cool event, again, like right place at the right time, which was like the first aviation and climate summit in Hawaii's history. And he just recognized my accent and heard me introduce myself, saying I was a Nottingham scholar. And he was making a documentary about this whole thing, and then we found out we were both Durham University alumni, so we had a lot to talk about. And then he was like, yeah, I was best friends with George Alagaya at university. We had a great time at Durham. And then it was so surreal, like this incredible event, and then like at the same time in the foreground, like flicking through photos of George Alagaya as like a 19-year-old. It was bizarre, but like, yeah, just magical.
I mean, those moments of kismet, I think, are probably common for not involving George Alagaya maybe, but those moments and experiences, I think, are familiar to so many scholars of like, what a small world, this is mad. But yeah, that's a pretty cool one, Sam. You're quite right. There are some questions in the chat. So I've just seen one from Haney. Thanks so much for your question. Asking, do projects encompass the academic? currently a PhD student from Knox. I'm a PhD student too, so welcome. We, as a general rule, we are open to all projects, and so do feel free to apply. The general criteria, though, and other management committee members, Russ, do jump in if I'm getting the wrong end of the stick here, but the general criteria for applications is that they are of benefit to Nottingham, Nottinghamshire, yourself and your employer. So as a general rule, we would look for something that would enhance the role of whatever you're doing in Nottingham or the county. So if we generally wouldn't look to add funding to a current PhD project, we would look for something maybe on a tangent to that, but not bolstering something that's maybe already being funded. But if there are new comments on that, pop them in the chat, or somebody else pop your hand up and jump in. I see we have a question from Natalie. If you want to go ahead and pop your mute off and your video on, go ahead.
Hi everybody.
Hi.
I applied for the scholarship this year. Unfortunately, didn't get to the interview because of the pandemic. But just want to say thank you so much for this. It's been so inspiring to hear stories and how it stayed with people so many years later. I would just like to ask something from past scholars. How confident were you in the project that you went there with initially, and how far away from that project did you stray when you actually got there? I don't know who wants to answer that, but
I'll go. Yeah, I think you do feel very confident in your own project. You feeling passionate about it and want to do that. But then when you get there, you find there's so many other things, other ways to take it. I remember Gareth, who's on the thing here, Gareth Morgan, he did so much research before he left. He'd almost done the project and then did a tangent when he got there, and it was brilliant. So you just have to follow your nose and see where things take you. And like with Chris, I mean, you never know where you're going to end up, but as long as you stay safe and follow your nose, it's amazing what you can do. You have to believe that you're doing something good and that you'll bring it back and you'll try and make an impact in the county. It may not be immediate, but it'll probably be in decades to come. So be passionate about your project and try to do it, but be very open to opportunities that come your way.
May I speak?
Please, Chris, please do.
Interesting, Natalie. I would say, having heard your previous speakers, I'm afraid when you touch that fantastic continent and that country, your ambitions as you left Nottingham just change in front of your very eyes. And although you hang on to your project, and in my case, can you imagine anything more boring than going to see insurance people? I hung on and I went to see them, all the people I promised, but around them was just this kaleidoscope of experiences and people that were taking you every which way. And you'd be foolish, I thought, as a young person not to pursue those, because I think Rachel said one of them changed it all. Me talking in after talking rubbish at dinners all over America. Since then, I've done a lot of after dinner speaking, and I'd never done anything before. And but from that, there's somebody in the audience says, I hear what he's saying. Why doesn't he join us? And so I arrived with one project, but the country still, as I go now, it is absolutely carpeted with opportunities.
Yeah.
I'd just like to echo that as well. That I think when we support scholars, so when you're due to go, you're buddied up, and that of a recent scholar, and their role is to help prepare you for being in America. And what we encourage is that have an itinerary, have some initial meetings, that keep that flexibility, because you literally do not know what opportunities are going to be presented to you. And sometimes you're on wild journeys, you meet random people, but it's that slight excitement of the unknown as well and where it's going to lead. When I got back from America, some of my business so I went to research social entrepreneurship, so that's something that I'm really passionate about. And some of my business networks suggested I should get involved in New College Nottingham. They had a new principal who was really big on entrepreneurship. And after a few meetings, I walked out of a role as entrepreneur in residence. So I didn't even expect it. I expected to have a few maybe guest lecturing roles, but to have a job out the back of this and a new role that I didn't even know what an entrepreneur in residence did, to be fair. But that was part of the exciting thing of actually creating a new role. And I think this this goes back to what I said earlier about the scholarship is an enabler. And I think you find a source of self-confidence that you might not realize you have. But by the end of it, if you can get through America on your own after several weeks, 3 months, you can pretty much do anything. And I think if you surround yourself with a like-minded network of friends, which is what the management team's all about, it's a great group of people. All the alumni community are great, and the stories just keep you motivated and keeping you wanting to strive to develop yourself as well. So yeah, really great confidence booster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's evidence from the horse's mouth for you there, Natalie, from 3 former scholars. I see there's Alex in the chat asking, wanting to ask a question. If you want to do so on camera, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can pop it in the chat. Do you have the hand up function, maybe?
Oh, sorry, I can't find the hand up, so I'll just.
You're all good. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me, Tori. It's been so great to hear all of your stories. And before any of you get the wrong impression, I'm actually a Canadian. So that's, yeah, it's just, I've been living in the UK for over 10 years now. But I'm really interested in applying for the scholarship this year. And I didn't really know what to expect from this evening, but it's been nothing but inspiring. So thank you all so much. I can't wait to start my application next year. I just wanted to ask if there's an industry in particular that you're looking to support in Nottingham. I work in the charity industry, but do media production and marketing. So I just wanted to know if there's something in particular that you're looking for in the next round of applications.
That's a great question, Alex. I think, again, the generic answer, and management team, feel free to jump in after this. But I think the generic feeling is that we don't specify what industries applicants should be coming from. You know, there's no kind of upvote for someone from one industry and not for another. The only time that changes is as and when we have themed scholarships. So obviously you heard from our 2020 scholar Tom earlier, so his scholarship was very specifically based in one area. But as a general rule, no, we want anybody who fits the profile of young professional living and or working in Nottingham to be able to apply. So we don't discriminate across industries at all. So yeah, highly encourage you applying, and please do so. We'll look forward to your application.
Thank you. And then the only other thing I was wanting to ask as well is if you need to take that time off work, maybe this would come later down the line once the application's in and everything, but how would you prepare that with your employer? Because I'm sure some employers wouldn't be that keen to give you that much time off work. So maybe I wonder if there's support within all the past scholars with how to organize that with your employer, or how that works. I'd just be interested to know.
Please go ahead.
Alex, in that particular case, I was actually an undergraduate with British Gypsum, and I was offered the Roosevelt Scholarship. And so I approached British Gypsum and said, hey, I've been offered this scholarship, can I go? And they said no. And I said, okay. And I wrote my resignation letter. And then I got a phone call from the head of personnel, and I was a very junior guy in charge of nothing. I got an offer of meeting him for lunch. So I went to meet him for lunch, a great amount of trepidation. He said, well, you can't go on this. I said, it's too good an opportunity to miss. And he said, well, okay, we'll let you go, but you can only go for 2 months. I said, well, I want to go for a bit longer than that. He said, well, okay, maximum 6 months. And I said, well, okay, if you pay me. So they said, well, okay, for the time that I spent with US Gypsum, I was on full salary. So I actually got it paid as well for a certain element, only 50% of it, when I went off to Russell to the US, and then we turned it into a round the world trip. And somebody, I think it was Sam, mentioned Honolulu. And to go back to the Honolulu side, it reminded me of Russ and I. We landed in Honolulu, and when we were flying in, we could see out of the aeroplane window that the sea was a bit brown, and we thought, oh, this looks a bit strange. And the pilot said something about there was a small earthquake going on. And we were going to meet this guy, Mitch, who we didn't really know, and stay with him for a few days. We turned up at the airport, he met us, and he said, hey, look, sorry guys, I got to go into the office. There's a bit of a crisis on there, but here's the keys to my car. This is where I live. This is a dive shop. You've got to go and see the guys there and arrange for your diving trip tomorrow, which I've paid for. And then I'll see you at home later on this evening. So this was a guy that Russell and I hardly knew. We had the keys to his car. We had where he lived, and he turned up about 6 hours later. It wasn't something we planned, but it just worked that way. And it was just brilliant.
That's amazing. I think that would be the best case scenario. I hope somebody gives me their car too.
I mean, don't rule it out. I can see it happening for sure.
May I just say something as well in response to what?
Please, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that you know, we do on the theme of kind of opening it up and having, you know, different theme scholarships. If you've heard some stories this evening and you're thinking about applying and you think, oh, but that person sort of covered my area. I just wanted people to know that the reason I found out about the scholarship itself is because somebody who was in a very similar job to me in the same organization, working for a homelessness charity at the time, she'd gone on the scholarship about 10 years earlier and then told me about it. And I thought, well, I'm kind of doing the same job, but you know, I'm going to take a different sort of angle on this. And so I brought a similarly themed scholarship to you know, my interview, and it all worked out for me. So don't shy away because you think that area might have been explored as well, because there's always new perspectives that could be found.
Yeah, that is a really excellent point. It's all about the merit of each individual application. So if you're confident in your project, that's, I think, one of the main things that we look for is somebody's passion and drive and confidence in what they're presenting. And you know, that's going to win us over as well as anything. Just quickly to say, we have reached 7:30. I'm sure some of the management committee and certainly myself can stay on for a bit longer. And I know we have some more questions. So there's by no means any pressure to go at all, but we also recognise, you know, these things can sometimes overrun. And if you need to shoot, thank you so much for being with us tonight. If you have additional questions and you do have to go, please do get in touch with us and stay in touch with us. You can find us on social media, usually at Notts Roosevelt, or just by searching Nottingham Roosevelt or NRMTS on the social media. And you can get in touch with us most easily through our website. If you go to the contact tab, that will go through to Russ, who will then disseminate your query to the correct person, and we'll go from there. So with that said, we had a question a little bit.
Could I just add to the answer to, so on your second point, Alex, if you don't fancy playing hardball like Jonathan, because that kind of terrified me, that story, I went through something similar. So my manager, I applied last year, so this is pretty current. My manager wasn't super keen. He's like, he likes to keep the status quo, and so I was kind of telling him about it as I was going through the process, but it was a bit of a stress for me. But Russ and the whole team were really supportive with that. They wrote me like formal letters, and obviously a lot of people have been through this over the years, and so they kind of have different tactics that they can help you, because it's sort of case by case basis. So I was in the public sector, and it's a success story for me, because I was expecting the best case scenario would be that I'd be allowed to go. I wasn't looking for any payment. I knew it was going to be tough, but I just didn't think that was an option. But in the end, with Russ's support, I was able to present a really good case of why it would be a benefit to my role. And then they ended up finding some budget for me from the their training budget. So they paid me like half my salary. So yeah, I was just over the moon. So if that's something you're worried about, don't let it hold you back.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. That's really, really helpful. And thank you for everyone's answers.
Yeah, I mean, more where that came from, I guess. You know, should you find yourself applying and being successful, there really is an awesome hive mind of previous alumni who will jump in and help however they can with queries like that. So I noticed we had some questions further up the chat. One was from Anna. Sorry, it's taken me a while to get to. Lots in the chat today. Asking, when do applications open and close? So when it's not a pandemic year, usually the answer would be they open, I think, oh, I'm going to get this wrong. I think they open December, January time, and they close around March. Somebody jump in if I'm wrong here. So that's usually our process. Having said that, with the pandemic this year, we still currently have our interviewees on hold from the 2020 applications this time around. So I'd suggest the best thing to do, just as this whole situation plays out, is to keep your eye on our website and on our social media. We really will push the application process when it opens again. And the website for anyone that needs it is rooseveltscholarship.org. So that's an easy one. There was another question from Kate. Are there any specific areas in the US where the scholarship focuses? If you mean geographically, no, you can go anywhere that you want to. I imagine between us all, we've probably visited all 50 states, somewhere in the mix. If you mean specific kind of business or topical areas, again, no, it really is wherever your imagination can take you, as long as you can ground it in a reality that this has some relation to your day-to-day life and work. And then a last question we had was from Amy about, are there any other themed scholarships coming up? For the minute, I don't believe that we have any themed scholarships lined up, but that is definitely an intention going forward. Does maybe Sheridan or Russ want to comment a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think we were trying to, from the strategy session, we were able to pinpoint a few, and by stronger links with D2N2 and the Growth Board, then we'll understand what people in Nottinghamshire, or what businesses would really like. And then that's where I think with the start of the theme scholarships.
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think our long-term, the reason why we mentioned CPD budget and CSR budget is that CPD budget is generally for internal use. So it might be that employers in different sectors send one of their members of staff as part of a wider professional development opportunity for their internal staff. But the CSR one is about you basically give an opportunity to somebody in Nottinghamshire through your CSR budget. So it might be on a similar theme to where that organisation sits in different industries, or they might just allow anybody to apply using that funding. So once the CSR budget goes into the central pot, anybody can apply. So that's the vision and aspirations for developing themed scholarships. And going back to your question, Alex, one of the things we also look like is need. So if your research project has an identifiable need and benefit to Nottingham, to your employer, and I think that's one of the greatest hooks to getting your employer on board. If you can link it back to their own internal strategy on why they should allow you to go to America, and we've had quite a bit of a mix arrangement with employers. So some employers will pay a subsidized salary to scholars out there. Some will pay the full salary, and some scholars who've gone out are still expected to report in return for still getting paid a salary. They still have to maybe log on to their work emails. They still might have to do some reporting, write case studies for their work. So I think this is where engaging with your employer as soon as possible and pitching it to, thinking about it from their position. What will it take them to say yes? What are their needs? What are their KPIs that they need to achieve? And how can the scholarship help you, your boss, and your organization achieve their own strategy and KPIs? So I think that's probably the best hook.
Yeah, our most successful scholars are the ones that work closely with the employer. And it evolves over time. You start out with an idea independent, and then as you get into it, you think, well, this could benefit my employer as well. And then it's about opening the right door to talk with your employer about what could be in it for them. And you get towards your win-win situation.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really. Like we say, we recognize that people will be applying from all different situations. We often have applicants from folks who are self-employed and also from people who are, employed by somebody else. You may encounter difficult conversations with your employers as you're putting that application through, but don't let that be a hurdle necessarily. We will do our best to help if we see that you're, a great scholar to join the Roosevelt family for sure. So I guess I don't see any more questions just now. If you do have them, pop your hand up or pop them in the chat. But maybe to round off, because I didn't want to miss these things, and hopefully you've all spotted them. But in answer to the previous question about your number one tale, we've got some great anecdotes in here. So Miles has said getting a free upgrade on a rental car because of his accent. Yeah, Russ saying 12 nights and 12 weeks. You may need to elaborate on that one, Russ.
Yeah, that was when Jonathan and I set out. We had 2 addresses, 2 US addresses, and out of the 12 weeks we were in the States, or I was there, I only had 12 nights in a motel or a hotel, and 4 of those were in the Bahamas. So it's just how welcoming people are, and everyone's got a brother somewhere else, and they just love to meet you. And yes, they do love the accent. But they're just warm and generous people. It's fantastic, and I worked there for 6 years and loved it.
Yeah, it's the universal tale, isn't it? We've all experienced that, generosity for nothing in return. It's pretty amazing. So Gareth, I see, has been talking about his time working for Dolly Parton in Pigeon Forge for the Imagination Library. Very, very cool. What other comments do we have here? More from Chris, I think. 3 quotes from hundreds. Let's take my boat into the Grand Canyon and down the Colorado. Naturally, why not? Met Dean Martin, and he says, Chris, say hi to Raquel Welch. I can only imagine. And take the pilot seat in Jumbo #1. I don't know, I feel like the scholarship might have changed since the 60s, Chris. Nobody gave me the opportunity to drive a plane, although I did have some fabulous alternative experiences. Sheridan staying with the Roosevelts, and many other similarly fab comments in there. So just to check, just thank you everyone. I think to wrap up, thanks so much for your comments, thanks for your contributions, thank you for caring about the scholarship and being here this evening. I think what we would ask going forward is please do stay engaged with us. If you're an alumni and you're receiving our newsletter, maybe if you're receiving it by post and you could happily receive it by email, drop us a link with your email, so it'll be easier for us to reach out to you. Make sure you're following us on social media for all of our updates. If you do think that you can volunteer some time or donate some money, all of these things are really very useful to helping us move forward. You know, we're a small but committed team that keeps the scholarship going, so every little helps.
Rachel, if I may interrupt, weren't you going to talk about match funding donations, which, if I remember correctly, hasn't been mentioned?
Yes, I mean, Tori, if you're still with us, do you want to drop in on that one?
I am still here. We had a quick word on it, but just in case anyone missed out, we do have match funding, so an opportunity to double donations if they're given between now and the end of the year due to the amazing support of a particular alumni member. So yeah, you can easily send in a single donation via our website, or you could just send a check, and feel free to get in touch with me or any of the committee if you want to talk about that. Yeah, easy peasy. I hope that makes it quite clear.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'd heard what you said about. I thought I was really embarrassing. Like, oh, was I not listening for a certain section? But I was. It was a mystery surrounding it. But that's all the more fun. I like the fact we don't know the other half. But yeah, thanks for that. So Texil has had a fantastic year. To fill you guys in, the company we met, GrandPad, who makes tablets for older people to stay connected, has had a wildly successful year launching in the UK through my company. So we're the sole retailer, and as a result, I'd like to donate as an organisation part of our profit this year to pay for at least what it cost to send me in 2017. But it's so timely that that's happened, because yes, as you all say, COVID's been awful, but as a result, we've been able to help thousands of older people around the UK stay in touch with their loved ones beyond the pandemic, who otherwise may not have found out about it, because, you know, needs make people look for things that they maybe otherwise needed. So that's one thing we can give back, which is why I wanted to ask about it again, just to kind of dig. But it's lovely how things have gone full circle, and now they're probably our closest partner. And it was all because of a Zoom I had in some smoky, ropey back hotel room in Houston with the CEO of California-based GrandPad. So yeah, really happy it's gone full circle. And I'd like to make a donation from Texil this year, and hopefully the mystery man or woman can match that and double it. So that's fantastic to hear. Thanks, Tori.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Miles. I just want to say that it's funny, when I was coming into the scholarship, you'd come back. And so one of the first stories I ever heard was from you, Miles, and it was inspirational then. And I can see that it's really, done you a great favor. So thanks for doing one back. Just excellent.
Yeah, I always said at one point I felt like I wasn't enough value to the management team, and I said to Ross, look, let me just go away and grow my business, and I'm helping in other ways. And this is it. He's let me did that. I went away, built the business with the American company, and here we are. So yeah, really grateful, and really look forward to giving back.
Well, Miles, thank you for that. That is superb. I was trying to say thank you on this chat thing, but I don't know how to send it.
Maybe you need a grandpad, Mick.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but I just think this has been absolutely the best, and possibly the way we should do celebration in the future, because it does really get everybody connected when life gets back to whatever normal will be in the future. But it's been brilliant. And I do just want to reiterate the thanks of the trustees to the management team, Russ, Sheridan, all of you. You're absolutely stars in the way you keep this running. And it's just been very special this evening. Well done.
Thank you.
Wow, what a cherry on the cake. Thanks, Miles. That's amazing. And so pleased to hear that, pandemic's not great, but obviously glad that it was in some way useful, I guess, to helping the business get moving.
For sure.
So yeah, I guess that rounds us out. Again, just to say thank you all for being here. You know how to get in touch with us. Please do so. Thanks to Sheridan for emceeing. Thanks to the management committee for holding everything together and keeping us moving. And we very much hope that we'll be able to pick some new scholars and send you off the adventure of a lifetime very soon. But until then, we'll sign out and say happy Thanksgiving for tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.